yourself. Lift your head like me. You got to wear your collar with dignity. How it was
Black is beautiful.
I said, sing it along.
Black is beautiful.
Say, I'm black and proud. It's my time that we get rid of that old slave mentality. La, 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 if you hear that, black is beautiful. Santa Claus.
Black is beautiful.
It's a textile. Lift your head like me. You got to wear your collar with dignity. How it was
Black is beautiful.
I said, sing it along.
Black is beautiful.
Say, I'm black and proud. It's my time that we get rid of that old slave mentality. La, 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 la.
in the market. So till GMC don't pay. Money not there for buy because you poor like me, you black like me, and poverty is your legacy. Last election was 64. Something then was election. That's all about corruption. Poor like me, you black like me, and poverty is your legacy. Yet we have democracy and can't do nothing. We have neither the power nor capacity. Code of Conduct Act, start cut down corruption tree, Liverpool, Brabazak, libel scandal, they clean in court, mirror in court, UC in jail, can't get so big. So, Holy man, Buck man, Black man, Chinese man, bury the act, renounce starvation, denounce corruption, announce revolution. Cause you're poor like me, you're black like me, and poverty is your legacy.
Very good evening to you, and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101 Black Matters. Black Matters, we'll be discussing Black Matters tonight, the voice of the late Michael June, back in 1976. You're black like me, and you're poor like me, and poverty is your legacy. Almost 50 years later, we are still crying out as Black people. We're still crying out, this time crying out louder, because you're black like me and you're poor like me, and poverty is your legacy. Good evening, wherever you're joining us from, whether you're joining us from Guyana or you're joining us from outside of Guyana. Tonight we're going to be discussing Black Matters. We're going to be discussing IDPADA-G and the attempt at regime change in IDPADA-G. We've seen the attempt at regime change in the Guyana Press Association, setting up people within the association to take the association over to the control of the regime. That failed. They have been, for the last 2 years, trying to effect regime change in IDPADA-G. It's really a sign of the times that they're trying to break African Guyanese. They're trying everything. They're trying naked force. They're trying assassinations. They're trying slander. They're trying bribery. They're trying treachery. Everything they are trying in order to break the African. And we have said on this program a number of times that anti-Black racism in Guyana is a means to an end, but over time, it will become an end in itself, an end in itself. And we've got to turn it back. We've got to turn it back. We've got to fight against it, and we've got to turn it back. Guyana suffers from many dooms, many ills. This week, we are seeing what happened in the Amerindian community. And I've said here that the tragedy at Mahdia should not be politicized. But there's some glaring political pictures, images. It happened in Mahdia, in the interior. It happened among Amerindians. If that dormitory was somewhere near to Pradoville, or one of the gated communities that the rich and powerful live in this country, that would never have happened. Safety of ordinary people is not a priority for the government. And I'm not pinning this on this government. Mahdia could have happened under any government. The priorities of our country, our government, the priorities. IDPADA-G came into being as a result of an international recognition that over 250 years after formal emancipation in our Caribbean and in other parts of the world, came later, that the ravages of racism, of slavery, continue to haunt our nations, our peoples. This is the United Nations, not necessarily a friend of Africans. IDPADA-G was formed as a symbol, recognition. The government at that time designated a small amount of money. They didn't give money to IDPADA-G to change the African condition. $100 million, Guyana dollars, Can't even change the condition of one African. But it was symbolic in the true tradition of our Guyana. During the African liberation struggles against apartheid, against the last vestiges of colonialism, Portuguese colonialism in Mozambique and Guinea-Bissau and Angola, our government at that time gave some money, small, poor country, budgeting money for the liberation of Africans in Africa, a recognition that we are all tied together. And in that tradition, President David Granger, I was there, Vincent Alexander was there, chided us in 2016, I think, for not doing much for the decade, and committed his government. And as he walked past, he stopped to speak with Alexander and myself. And basically said to us, you all got to make this thing happen. This is not the government got to make it happen. You all got to make it happen. And those who felt that Alexander came out of nowhere and commandeered IDPADA-G, I was there when the president came off the stage. And there is a photograph, I was looking for it. And he said to Alexander and myself, it was at Coffee 250 annual forum. He committed in the tradition of the Guyana government, the government under Forbes Burnham, committing money to recognize the liberation of the African. And the government has come in a time of oil and gas, it should be multiplying the money committed by Granger by 50 times, because we now have the money. It's not a secret that in a Guyana, where all ethnic groups find themselves at the bottom of the ladder, that the African is at the bottom of the bottom. Jagan was right, Chedi Jagan, when he said Africans were at the bottom of the ladder. Where he went wrong is that he did not explain that they were at the bottom of the ladder, not because something is wrong with them. It's that there is a history that placed them at the bottom of the ladder. And as they tried to rise, there was always a force pulling them back down. And IDPADA-G was formed to encourage Africans in what Walter Rodney calls self-emancipation. And as they're rising, a force is pulling them back down. They took away the money from IDPADA-G. They tried everything. And now they are using Africans to destroy IDPADA-G. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Vincent Alexander is here. Simpson De Silva is here. I think Dion Abrams is here. They have been integrally involved with the IDPADA-G story. And you might have seen a letter by a brother named Kafra, or a letter by Vincent Alexander, and Kafra responding to Vincent Alexander. We're going to talk about what is that all about. It's regime change. That they're trying in IDPADA-G. Vincent, good evening.
Good evening, David.
Dion Abrams, good evening.
Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening to you. Gentlemen, welcome. I know we're supposed to be joined by Simpson De Silva, Dr. Simpson De Silva. He is not here yet. The IDPADA-G story is not new. The audience here has been following what has been attempted and in some instances accomplished in the struggle to dismantle IDPADA-G as part of the larger struggle of control. But this latest episode is about some breakaway group that is trying to either control IDPADA-G or form a new IDPADA-G. Vincent, let me start with you. Give us a background to this new attempt on the part of this so-called group of organizations led by Brother Kafra that is trying to quote-unquote hand over IDPADA-G to the government. Vincent, go ahead. Are you hearing me, Vincent?
Yes, I'm with you. Sorry. I'm with you.
Yes, I was asking you to start by giving us a background of this latest episode regarding this so-called group within IDPADA-G that is trying to quote-unquote work with the government.
The fact of the matter is there's no so-called group within IDPADA-G trying to work with the government. What has occurred is that one Ras Kafra, who at the very inception of the formation of IDPADA-G made a statement which should never have been taken lightly. And that statement he made at that time was that no leader of the APNU should ever be in leadership of IDPADA-G. He made that statement on the floor of IDPADA-G. The question of a breakaway group is, as I said, there's no such group, but let me explain what has happened. The government of Guyana, through the Minister of Governance last year, wrote 7 African Guyanese organizations, namely PANAF, AGDA, Naibingi, Rastafari Council, Spiritual Chematic Council, that's something. They wrote 7 African Guyanese organizations, requesting that those 7 Guyanese organizations come together to identify representatives for the ERC, Ethnic Relation Commission, and the Women and Gender Commission. So it was a collective activity they asked us to be engaged in, as they asked the religious bodies, as they asked the youths, as they asked a number of different sectors. We got together, and those 7 organizations, since I was representing the G, and IDPADA-G is an umbrella organization, and they're all members of IDPADA-G, then I would chair the group of 7. I chose of issues you might have had. It emerged that Ras Kafra was nominated to be the representative of the African Guyanese community on the ERC, and Ras Nicole Cole was nominated to be the representative of the African Guyanese community on the Women and Gender Commission. For all intents and purposes, that cluster of 7 wound up was dissolved because it was brought together for a specific purpose, and that is to identify nominees, and that it did do. PAFA, however, has taken up the position that since he is on the ERC as a representative of the African Guyanese community, that he can continue the life of that cluster under his leadership for the purpose of representing the African Guyanese community. There's no organization, and I dare say, including the Rastafari Council, who has subscribed to a cluster of 7 to represent the African Guyanese community under CAFRA's leadership. No organization, and I dare say, including the Rastafari Council. What CAFRA did was to invite. What CAFRA did was to invite various Guyanese, African descent, to assist him in the drafting of what may be called a position paper to the ERC on the question of the African Guyanese community. And those colleagues, some of them pledged their skill to assist him in that process. Lo and behold, unbeknownst to them, he then crafts a letter to the president requesting a meeting with the president in the name of a cluster of 7 African Guyanese organizations. Falsely so, because of those 7 Guyanese organizations, he named, for example, IDPADA-G. IDPADA-G has never been in touch with CAFRA for the purpose of naming a representative to any group that he might have. What CAFRA did was to invite Dr. Simpson De Silva, who is here with us tonight, to be an expert advisor in the putting together of his position paper from the standpoint of sustainable development. Lo and behold, in the letter to the president, he cites Simpson De Silva as IDPADA-G's rep. There's never been any such representation by IDPADA-G. The original cluster, I chaired it. It was dissolved. We also see that in that document, he mentions that Eric Phillips is the representative of AGDA. I have been duly informed that Eric Phillips is not on AGDA's board, and AGDA itself has since penned a letter distancing itself from the actions of CAFRA. He also included Nicole De Silva, hope I got her first name right, indicating that she was representing the All African Guyanese Council. She was one of the persons who he invited with her skills in project development to assist him in work. All African Guyanese Council has never been consulted for a representative, nor has she ever seen herself as such a representative. So really, there's no group of 7, no group of 7 led by CAFRA that is involved in this expedition. It is CAFRA's figment and machinations that has provided the opportunity for him to write a letter to the president. And interestingly, in the letter to the president, in two of the paragraphs, he doesn't reference the group. He says, I propose, I suggest. And that is exactly what it is. Him proposing and him suggesting. And what he's accused us of something that we heard from Jagdeo. Jagdeo, in one of his press conferences, says that IDPADA-G sneaks off to the United Nations to murky the waters of Guyana and to damage our image. With that in the letter, he concurred that we were going to the UN and saying things that cast the government in a bad light, and that the task was now his to work with the government to correct that and to develop a national development plan for the people of African descent that would be aligned to the government's plan for the Sustainable Development 2030. So he's writing President Ali saying, please meet with me so that we can work together, one, to push back on IDPADA-G's efforts to murky Guyana's waters, and two, to develop a plan, because we're the ones who really have an interest in the people of African descent. He's seeking to suggest in his most recent letter that a number of organizations had written, and they were the ones who brought their attention to the minister that caused our subvention to be removed and things of that nature. So we've seen where the hands have been moving. But the fact of the matter is that IDPADA-G challenges the government of Guyana and CAFRA to show that IDPADA-G has done anything untoward in terms of its financial management. There were concerns in IDPADA-G by some members that they would have preferred to see the program fashioned in a particular way. And those concerns can be addressed and are being addressed by IDPADA-G. But no one can point a finger to IDPADA-G in terms of its financial management. No one can point a finger at IDPADA-G in terms of all that it did is in the interest of the African Guyanese community. As a secretariat, that secretariat works for and with the African Guyanese community. The government's position is that we are paying too much money into the secretariat. Money should go direct to the communities. I don't know what the government wants us to do with 100 million in terms of helping 65 organizations and the wider African Guyanese community. Because our programs have targeted not just 65 organizations. We see them as representatives. Our program has targeted the wider African Guyanese community, including 65 African organizations. So for example, if we hold an investor-thon, any African Guyanese youth that participate in that investor-thon. If we hold a Ujama, that's an exhibition for vendors, as we have done on more than one occasion in the Main Street Avenue and on Coffee Tarmac, it's for any African Guyanese vendor. And I dare say I've seen other African Guyanese vendors participate. If we hold workshops, as we've done for contractors, to assist them to be able to apply for contracts, any African Guyanese can apply and be a part of those workshops. When we went across the country to identify the persons who had been bypassed by the original enumerators in relation to the flood, people of all ethnic groups came, and we made a submission to the Minister of Agriculture of approximately 4,000 names. We spent approximately $4 to $5 million in that exercise. Made a submission to agriculture with the intention that those people will be serviced. We have the feedback that some were serviced, and we know that when they had the budget debate last time, the Minister of Agriculture waived the letter that I wrote to him saying that IDPADA-G had been working with the government on that matter, and the government had worked with IDPADA-G. And I can go on and on to say what IDPADA-G has been doing in pursuit of the decade. And in addition to the local activities, we have been participating in the United Nations Permanent Forum for the People of African Descent, as well as in the Expert Working Group for People of African Descent. We've been participating there. And our participation there is described by Jagdeo as sneaking off to murky the waters of Guyana. What have we said to murky Guyana's water? We have reported on the Boston murder. We have reported on the Bacchus murder. We have reported on the non-attention to the murder of the Henry boys. We have reported on the Mocha Arcadia situation, the land. And Jagdeo calls that sneaking off to bring Guyana into disrepute. That's what he calls it. And CAFRA joins with him to say, yes, that's what we're doing. And believe you me, we have information which suggests not having attended the first working session of the experts in Geneva, the government of Guyana did not attend, IDPADA-G attended. Not having attended the second working session, IDPADA-G attended. And in addition to its attendance, we held what is called a side event, to which members of the embassy came, the Guyana embassy came. Not having attended those activities, and now that we have the second session of the permanent body to be held in New York from the 30th to the 2nd, I'm advised that the government will be attending because they're required to report on work that they are doing, keeping with the Sustainable Development Goals. But not only are they attending, it is reported that they are now funding CAFRA, ostensibly as a member of the ERC, to attend. I don't know if the ERC determined that he should be attending, but I am advised that the government is funding him to attend. And so for all intents and purposes, what we're seeing is a continued effort to bring down IDPADA-G. An effort which started with some internal forces, which failed. An effort which continued with the government withdrawal of the subvention. And I rather suspect they thought that once they withdrew the subvention, we would fold up. We have not folded up. And we have found resources to attend Geneva. We have found resources to attend the Permanent Forum at the end of this month. And we will continue to mobilize human resources and other resources to do the work, albeit that work is effective, of IDPADA-G in pursuit of the interests of the people of African descent and the goals established by the United Nations for decades. CAFRA has sought in some of his previous pronouncements to say that I am an illegal chairperson of IDPADA-G. In December 2017, the organizations gathered at that time, and we were 17, I think, at that time, unanimously elected me to chair IDPADA-G. And CAFRA was one of those persons. So if I'm illegal, he's a party to that illegality. More recently, we've had elections, and I have been re-elected by the Assembly to chair the organization. CAFRA goes out there to say I'm illegal. CAFRA's attempted to say that Coffee 250 has hijacked IDPADA-G. It's quite the opposite. You know, David, as much as I know, that when the president spoke to us, asking us to take the process forward, that I went to Coffee 250. And I said to Coffee 250 that notwithstanding that the president had made a call at a Coffee 250 forum, that the call was to the wider Guyanese community, and that Coffee 250 should initiate the formation of a body in response to the president's call. It is in that circumstance that Coffee 250 asked me to coordinate the organizations across Guyana. And so we entered into an active coordination where we worked for over a year collectively to form IDPADA-G. CAFRA was there, may have had his agenda, but we soldiered on to form IDPADA-G. When IDPADA-G would have been formed, of course, I became the chairperson of IDPADA-G. One other person from Coffee 250 became a council member. CAFRA claims that there are 65 organizations and 3 Coffee 250 persons as signatories to the count. So that is blatantly untrue. Dr. De Silva is sitting here with us. He is one of the signatories. He's not from Coffee 250. He came from Pat Farmer. Dr. Curtin was one of our signatories, and he was not from Coffee 250. He's one of the persons we copied from the wider African Guyanese community. I am a signatory, not because I'm Coffee 250, but because I'm chairperson of IDPADA-G. Ms. Sampson is a signatory, not because she's from Coffee 250, but because she's the CEO appointed through a transparent process of IDPADA-G. So there is so much that CAFRA has sought to say and to do to bring down IDPADA-G that has no basis in truth and in fact. And the 7-man or 7-person cluster is another attempt by him in cahoots, to create a scenario in an attempt to bring down Coffee 250. There's no such group in existence, and the persons who have been named will have already started to expose CAFRA for his devious behavior, inviting them to assist him in crafting a document, and then suggesting to the president that they are now a group that has a problem with Coffee 250, with IDPADA-G, and are seeking to meet the president to represent themselves as an alternative to IDPADA-G.
Thanks, Vincent, for that background. It is important that we go through the details over and over again. Let me bring you in, Simpson, because you are obviously central to this, because you were one of the consultants. Obviously thought you were doing something different from what eventually happened. Talk to us.
Thank you very much, David, for having me. I recall vividly that I was asked by CAFRA to speak to the issues of the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals. And I accepted to be part of a group to educate and to advise ERC because they were preparing to go to an event which is the National Voluntary Review by the government of Guyana of the Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals. As you know, David, I've been working, educating, speaking to people throughout the length and breadth of Guyana, and to be more specific, all over the world. And I've been working with all parties, be it WPA, PPP, PNC, AFC, whichever. It is known, it is no secret that I decided that I would help, advise, work along with anyone as long it is in the interest for the development of our people. And Vincent is right. It is not only people of African descent that we actually assisted. Our focus is people of African descent, but we never discriminated from since 2015 when we were doing a lot of work. A matter of fact, it goes long before that. But if you were to put it in the context of the time that local, well, in this case, the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030, we were there in the trenches all along. And so when the time came and he told me about the meeting, I said I will only go if I'm going in the capacity of a technical expert to guide and advise ERC and be able to ask some pertinent questions at the level when the ministers and the technical people were making presentation. Matter of fact, you had 7 ministers present and the Prime Minister at that convention center. And I seized the opportunity to give a lot of guidance at that forum. So after that event, we then, I made it clear to CAFRA that I enjoyed the event and I played the role that I intended. But at no point in time was I asked to represent an organization as a body. However, I saw my name appearing on a letter that was drafted to go to the president. From that moment, I ceased to engage with any activity with the group and whomever else. I refused to make any further contribution because it was not what I had agreed to. It was not transparent. It was not fair to me. And at that time, I thought the fact that IDPADA-G's name was next to my name, I had a responsibility to say to IDPADA-G that, hey, this is what is happening, and I don't think that I would want to be in that space. And that is the extent to which my direct involvement was. But as you know, David, we have been in the trenches all over the country, and we'll continue to go to educate anyone. But of course, we make sure that people of African descent, in this case, Afro-Guyanese, must be included in this agenda, and be it low carbon development strategy, be it 25 by 2025 for the reduction of the import bill in CARICOM, whatever that it has to do with people, progress, and prosperity, and respect for the planet, I am available to work with anyone that would advance those specific causes. And that, in a nutshell, is how I got in and how I exited from that group. But I want the world to know that I would forever work with anyone that is working in the interests of all. equality for all, equity for all, prosperity for all. That is what I'm about, and from what I know, that is what IDPADA-G is about. And as Vincent said very well, that we have not used for our personal gain any of those monies. We spent the money where we thought it was appropriate. Of course, no one is perfect. We all can make mistakes. But we have to use those mistakes or challenges as grit for our mill for prosperity, and not for anyone think that they have the right to to prevent us from enjoying, first of all, our right and the rights of the collective African Guyanese body. We are here to make sure that the legacy of our ancestors, the heritage, are protected, and we must be prepared to fight to stay united, irrespective of what anyone may try, and advance the cause of the blood and the sweat and the tears of our ancestors. That's our legacy. We know that it's because of cooperativism that caused us to be here. It is because of cooperativism that the villages were bought. And it's through cooperativism we must stay together and fight the enemy so that we will win.
Dion Abrams, you represented PANAF, I assume, or PANAF was, of course, represented in that group that got together to nominate and appoint persons to the ERC and to the Women's Advisory Board. Were you aware that the group remained active as Brother Kafra seems to be making out to the president?
Well, Dr. Hines, there are some things that need to be clarified. I mean, I'm happy that Vincent went through the whole process of how IDPADA-G came into being, because, like he said, the Pan-African movement, and I was at a lot of those meetings where we trashed out all of the matters relating to the formation of IDPADA-G, so that it could become an organization representing the African Guyanese community. And it's disappointing that at this stage of the progress that has been made, that we have people who should be enlightened from a community that preaches, righteousness and Black consciousness, that a representative from that community can be working in the negative interest of all African Guyanese. The thing is, you mentioned PANAF being represented in the initial group that Vincent said came together to elect the representative to the ERC and the women's representative. But the person representing PANAF in those meetings was the treasurer of PANAF. And the last we saw of that individual after the death of Professor Long, who was the architect behind the establishment of PANAF in 1988, was at a barbecue fundraising event that we had at Brother Tom Dalgetty's place over a year ago. And since that event, we have not been able to contact the treasurer to tell us about the takings from that event and to even attend any meeting of PANAF. And all our efforts to get Sister Pearline McLean to be at PANAF meetings, to be in touch with the organization, all of those have failed. And so the Pan-African organization was surprised. I don't know how it was that she was sent the correspondence to represent PANAF at that meeting. That correspondence wasn't sent to the organization, but Sister Pearline turned up at all of those meetings, purportedly representing PANAF without a mandate from PANAF. And the subsequent engagement after that, the ERC rep and Sister Nicole were chosen. That also, we saw her name appearing as representing the Pan-African movement in this group of 7. I'd like to reiterate at this point to formally say that her absence from the organization tells us that she has no interest in the organization as a body. I don't know if she has a personal interest, but she doesn't represent PANAF. And we are asking the public not to, and the government agencies, whomever, are in touch with her in this pretext of being representative of PANAF, that Mrs. Pearline McLean does not represent the Pan-African organization, and she's not given a mandate to say that she is representing PANAF. PANAF is not a part.
Dion, clarify for us. Is
Yes.
she being named by Brother Kafra as part of his group?
Yeah, she has.
And so you are saying here that she does not represent PANAF.
She doesn't
so
represent.
PANAF is not part of Kafra group.
PANAF is not a part of that.
Wonderful. That's what we want. That's what we want to make sure. So, sisters and brothers in the audience, it's clear. We have 3 members here, 3 persons here who are named as part of Kafra's story, saying here that they are not part of it. They're not part of it. PANAF is not part of it. Brother Simpson de Silva's organization is not part of it. Brother Vincent Alexander IDPADA-G is not part of it. So this is a scam. This is a scam. It's an organizational scam that is aimed at turning over a legitimate African organization to the government of Guyana as part of its attempt to stifle and control the African Guyanese community. I've put that picture on the screen. August 7, 2016, after President Granger gave the feature address at Coffee 250's annual State of the African Guyanese Forum, as he was walking off the stage, he stopped to speak with Vincent Alexander, you see there. You see myself there. And you see another sister who is part of Coffee 250 board. He stopped to speak with us. And he, as part of that conversation, said to Vincent and myself that you all have to take this thing and that this picture is very important because I've heard so many accusations that Vincent has commandeered this thing and Vincent is this and Vincent is that. The president made that announcement at a Coffee 250 conference. And the understanding that was Coffee 250 was going to move this thing forward. And he said to Vincent and I, as leading members of Coffee 250, you all got to move the thing. Vincent is the person, as he said, that came to Coffee 250 and said, look, yes, the president announced this thing as Coffee 250, but we have to include other organized Black organizations. And we unanimously agreed. We initially agreed that we're going to have an initial meeting with AGDA and PANAF and the All African and some of the organizations that we knew existed, the national organizations. And then as the thing evolved, it moved to include Guyanese organizations outside of Georgetown. Vincent is correct. I was part of the process. And it is not true that Coffee 250 commandeered it. I am a leading member of Coffee 250, and I have never been part of the inner workings of IDPADA-G. I didn't want to be a part of it. We already had Vincent there representing us. And so we want to make that clear. I know that they're listening to this program. And I want them, that picture is there. And I want them to know that it is simply not true. It is simply not true. Vincent, IDPADA-G has written to the president requesting a meeting with the president. That meeting is yet to take place. Here is this gentleman, this brother, now requesting to meet with the president as if it's something new, as if IDPADA-G never wanted to meet with the president. Expand on that, please, Vincent.
The first maneuver occurred, and the Minister for Culture and Sports summoned the IDPADA-G to a meeting. We attended that meeting. I attended that meeting. I was accompanied by Sister Miriam Simpson and Brother Royston. We were a bit late. And there may be some other rep. The minister summoned us, but did not come to the meeting which he summoned. He sent the permanent secretary with 3 questions. We responded to the 3 questions. And I took the opportunity on that occasion to indicate to the minister that we were desirous of meeting with him. I asked the permanent secretary, his official representative, to indicate to him our desire to meet with him. We've never had a response from the minister in that regard. When they did the investigative audit, the minister would have been privy to the results of that audit. He, after Jagdeo publicly accused IDPADA-G, and probably 1 or 2 other persons wrote something in the papers, he demanded that we resubmit all the information that had been perused by the auditors. We responded to him that he was requesting information, all of which had already been made available to the Ministry of Finance, and that we were willing to meet with him to discuss any issues, as much as we said to the Ministry of Finance as well, the minister, that we were willing to meet with him on any other issues. We've never had a positive response. IDPADA-G, in the course of its work, recognizing that we had agreed that we should be addressing policies, programs, and projects, had put together a group of people to help us to come up with the ideas we ought to dialogue with the government on. When that work was completed, we wrote to President Irfan Ali. It had nothing to do with controversy. As IDPADA-G, we wrote to him and say, you, the president, we with IDPADA-G, we'd like to meet with you to discuss matters of mutual interest. We got no response. The CEO was on the same platform with the president last year, August, Emancipation Time in New Amsterdam. She seized the opportunity to publicly indicate that we requested to meet the president, and then took the opportunity to speak with him personally about that meeting. He advised her to make contact with the office of the president in pursuit of that meeting. She made contact. They said they could not locate the letter that she had sent and that she should send another copy, which she did. We got no response. I then met the president, incidentally, at the launch of the Merchant Bank. And unlike another African Guyanese who was criticized for not shaking his hand, I shook his hand. And I asked him about the meeting. His response was that he was going off to the United States. When he gets back, we'd meet. He got back. There was no meeting. I then had the opportunity of meeting with him once again on the occasion of the swearing in of Commissioner Clement Rui to GCOM. It is in the public domain, like the picture you just showed. There's a chronicle picture showing me shaking his hand, but at the same time, leaning over and whispering into his ears that we were still to meet. On that day, I had a short interaction with him in his office, the first week of meeting. He said to me he was going to Trinidad. When he returned, we would meet. Lo and behold, before he returned, Jagdeo was out there attacking IDPADA-G. We got no meeting. As things got worse, I wrote him a second letter. I'd written him a first letter. I wrote him a second letter saying, IDPADA-G wishes that you fulfill your promise to meet with us. The CEO has written a letter. We've sent you 2 copies of that. I have written you a previous letter. In that previous letter, I said to him, do you see what's happening in the public domain? We need to meet to overcome the issues which are being projected into the public. No response. And I subsequently reminded him of his promise to meet. And again, we've had no response. I await to see what would be his response to a fictitious group of 7 in the face of IDPADA-G's request to meet, when nobody can question that IDPADA-G was formed by the African Guyanese community to represent its interests. We have worked locally and we have worked with the United Nations as was envisaged by the establishment of the working group of experts and by the establishment of the permanent forum for the people of African descent. We don't have to sneak off anywhere. Anything we say in those fora, are related to events that occurred in this country. And we have no apologies if the United Nations then asks the government to comment on what we would have in our exchanges with the UN communicated. We are still prepared. In my last letter, my closing salvo was, we are still prepared to meet with President Ali. President Ali has promised IDPADA-G. President Ali has made statements, particularly last year at Emancipation, about his understanding of the contribution of the people of African descent in this country and his willingness to work with them. We are holding President Ali to his word. As we hold him to his word, we are continuing to represent the people of African descent locally and internationally, speaking the truth.
Vincent Alexander there. Let me ask you, Dr. De Silva and Brother Dion, a general question. It is clear from what you all have laid out here tonight that, you know, there are brothers and sisters who are prepared to work against the institutions in their own communities to advance another agenda. That is clear. Simpson, you've been around a long time. You've been in government, out of government. I, always remind my audience that, you were one of the youngest ministers in government in the 1980s. Gosh, almost 40 years ago. You were a little boy then when you were appointed. You have been around. What is happening in our community? What is happening in our community that is driving this? I refuse to believe that Brother Kafra is a bad man. I've never met him personally. So there must be some force that is driving what is becoming a trend. Simpson and then Dion.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. I think the problem we have is a problem of education. We need to continue to educate our people, because I find it very strange of the level of ignorance that prevail. And I'm using the word ignorance here just merely to say lack of knowledge by the younger generation and even the older generation. I am surprised that many of our older folks who are around still do not understand the history of our struggles. So we have a special role to play to be educating our people. We have to teach them how to love one another. I think a lot of that is missing. We have to let them understand that this whole business of Afrophobia, it's a big problem. Why are we fearful of us? Why are we beating up on us? Why are we beating up on our children? Why are we not understanding that it is over 400 years that our people worked and were not paid, or people were deemed as subhuman? And now that we have the opportunity to excel and to exhale, we need to seize that opportunity. So for me, we need to understand that there's a crisis, a serious crisis within our households, within our homestead, within our communities. And the more that things like these happen, at least for me, I'm heartened to work even harder to help, to be part of the conversation, help to solve the problem by taking massive action right now. Because if we do not, we will be enslaved all over again. And it's through so-called neocolonialism, colonization, and other instruments of those kinds, that if we are not very careful, we will be not only at the bottom of the ladder, but we will suffer tremendously. So I would like to see us taking these occasions or taking what is happening as a stimulus for us to call on all, not only among us as African Guyanese and people of African descent, but all those who are sympathetic of the cause. Because as you know from history, there are many people of different ethnicity that participated in the struggle and meant well. So we need to use all stakeholders, all the energy we have, and to put a stamp against racism, against discrimination, against marginalization, against anything that is evil for the development of us as human beings. So, David, I've been around, as you said. Next year would be 40 years since I was a Minister of Agriculture. And I have not stopped since then to practice the principles of sustainable agriculture development. And I will not stand by to be used by anyone to go against the grain of the advancement, not only of people of African descent, but all people. And I call on all of us to join to make sure that we use our technical skills, social skills, scientific skills, all the skills, and unite, because it's in unity that we strong. And lastly, I must admit that Guyana has a marvelous opportunity to be a country in the world that can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. We are the fastest growing economy in the world. So therefore, we as people of African descent must grow along with the kind of progress that is supposed to be experiencing. We must not be discriminated against, and we should not allow anyone to take us down that path. So that is my humble position. Let us unite. Let us make sure that we are at every table. And while we are waiting, let us get very busy and be actively involved by teaching our people to do what is right for the advancement of all of us.
Brother Dion, 1984, I know what you were doing because you were a young, still a high school student at that time, apprenticing under us. And I know that Afrophobia is not something that you suffer from, and you must be dismayed at this willingness on the part of good people. And I think Brother Kafra is good, and a lot of these other brothers and sisters are good people. You must be dismayed that good Africans are allowing themselves to be used in a sinister and not so sinister grand plan in the age of wealth to make sure that we are at the bottom when it comes to access to that wealth. Go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, Dr. Hines. When Dr. De Silva spoke and he talked about education, I was a bit taken aback because the people that we're dealing with are not uneducated people. Like I said in my opening remarks, the individual that we're focusing on today is supposed to be from an enlightened community, Rastafarian community, you understand? Upholding the principles of I and Rastafari, a level of consciousness about self as a black individual that questions now the integrity of that belief. So when we look at also the Public Service Credit Union, I mean, Sir Mars is dead. But when you look at the people who are part of that machination to oust a progressive individual that was looking to uplift the African Guyanese community, and when Trevor started, I said, boy, they're gonna come after you. What are you gonna do about it? Because I knew for a fact that the financial community, where they wanted us to continue to pour our resources, would not stand by and allow the credit union to siphon off the people whom they target the most for. And just to divert a bit, I went into one of the financial institutions that does a lot of lending for building of homes and so on. And I looked beyond the counter to see the employees who were there, and there wasn't a single black person. But all of the people who went for loans for building homes and so on in that society were black. All of the customers were black. And then I reflected on the Public Service Credit Union, and I said, here is the evidence of why. But the people who were there, who removed Trevor, are all enlightened African, educated people. So this business of education is not just a matter for us to look at. We have to look beyond and look at people's personal, I mean, you don't know what is driving them. It could be their own self-aggrandizement, whatever it is. But the point is that it is not working in the interest of the overall African community. And we really have to begin to find ways, not education, of dealing with these people so that they understand that, the progress of the nation cannot be hampered by a few who are seeking to serve themselves. But it's actually a disappointment for me, and I hope that the Rastafarian brothers can come out and speak against this kind of thing, because it doesn't spell good. I look up on Rastafari as I mean, we hold them to a certain level of consciousness, and this is defeating all of that. Certainly.
Yeah, Brother Vincent, tomorrow is going to be 57 years of our independence journey, our independence project. The picture tonight is not that encouraging as far as the African Guyanese contribution to that independence is concerned. But there must be much more that is positive as we go into tomorrow, 57 years along the way. Your take and final word.
Well, one has to equate independence with birthing and building a nation. Birthing and building a nation. Birthing and building a nation in the context of that requires that we have the kind of collaboration,
Yeah?
cooperation, cohesion across the ethnic divide. And in many regards, that has been the bugbear that we have had to confront all of the years, all of the 57 years. Dr. Silva mentioned a particular concept earlier. And that concept he mentioned was cooperativism. And I like to separate that out from cooperative socialism.
Yeah.
And to say that cooperativism is that institution, that ideology that has been planted and that can rescue the people of Guyana. And that we do have institutions which are reflective of that national coming together. I ever so often use the NIS. It may not be the best managed place, but the fact that we have an institution where we can collectively make contributions and be beneficiaries when we become senior citizens shows what can be done collectively, shows the role that institutions can play, and therefore underlines the benefit that is being derived and the benefit that can be derived from institutions and the role of institutional development in relation to nation building. Those institutions are the mechanisms for the realization of our independence. All is not lost. We have examples we can look to that have been success stories, and we have to build on those. But the greatest institution we have to create is one of cohesion. And that is what, in many regards, IDPADA-G is about. In IDPADA-G, we have made it clear, notwithstanding the machinations of a CAFRA, that whether you are PPP, whether you are PNC, whether you are AFC, whatever you are in terms of the party you support, that there are commonalities that the people of African descent can work together to achieve. And IDPADA-G is the place where that can happen. I don't know what CAFRA means when he says that some set of PNC people sought to capture IDPADA-G in furtherance of the PNC's effort in 2015. I would like him to identify where and when IDPADA-G was involved in a partisan PNC effort. Having entertained him from the inception, although he manifests himself to be anti-PNC, he still thought he had a right as a person of incidentally partial African descent. Partial African descent. All is not lost. We
All
need
is
to
not
take
lost.
the opportunity to reflect, to see where we have had successes, what has informed those successes, and to take those experiences into developing the wider Guyanese society. It's not just about wealth. It's about the private sector being the engine of growth. And in that regard, the cooperative movement should be the way in which the small man is involved in that private sector, contributing to the engine of growth. And the state being the facilitator of development. Development is not just about wealth. It's about health. It's about education. It's about leisure. It's about sports. It's about the arts. It's about the enhancement of the life of the average citizen.
Simpson, independence reflections quickly.
Yeah, I would like to see us taking the opportunity to link from the past, take the experiences of 1763, 1823, 1834, 1838, and then you come up to 1966, 1970, 1972, and we understand clearly that it's the efforts of the ancestors, efforts of brothers and sisters then, and we linked all of that to the contemporary time of the Agenda 2030 and its Sustainable Development Goals, which has one of the best opportunities if the concepts and principles were to be practiced as are put by the working group of experts who have developed the operation guidelines for the inclusion of people of African descent. And then also there's a group that put together what you call the disaggregation of data in surveys. If those things were to be practiced by our people now, then the whole business of racism, discrimination will be squashed. But if we sit back and be silent and allow them to continue not to be doing the rightful thing, then the whole business of racism, discrimination, and abuse of rights will continue. So we have a responsibility at this time of independence to make sure that we are independent in all sense, economically, spiritually, environmentally, socially, in the holistic sense. And we make sure, and I go back to the question of teaching, learning, having conversation, taking the right action, massive action for transformation now. Because a lot of us may think we know it, but we have to go learning on a daily basis so we can apply the concepts and principles have policies in place, programs in place, projects in place, so that we can be part of this equal opportunity and equity, and inequality must disappear. That is what we want. We must not go there and just dance and have a merry time. We must think seriously and aspire, work hard to become truly independent. That's my word to us as a people, and it's about us doing it momentarily. It's about now. It's not about later. Tomorrow may be just too late. Let us do it today as one united family.
Dear Abrams, Independence Reflections, as we
Yeah,
go.
it is sad, because when we talk about independence, we look at the struggles that we had to rid ourselves of the control of an external power in the colonizers. But now we have to reflect on independence and look internally, because we now have an internal power that is seeking to dominate, to discriminate, to treat people in every facet of a force that is not unlike the colonizers, and is brutish, nasty, and devious. And it means, therefore, now that, like the Amerindians, the Africans who are now under tremendous pressure in this country, that we have to begin a new independence struggle. And it is absolutely sad that we are at this state. As Simpson said, the struggle, the independence has to be looked at again, so that all the people of this country can feel a real sense of independence in a country that is touting the idea of one Guyana. We know one people, one nation, one destiny. And at this time, we are far removed from that. And so Africans and Amerindians are now finding themselves battling for a new independence. It's tragic.
Tragically, Dion Abrams, Vincent Alexander, Dr. Simpson De Silva. Brothers, thank you all so much for coming on tonight. And of course, we start at a particular place and we end up at the place of nation, history, and the present as we move into the future. Thank you all very much. And as you said in your independence reflection, that we have to be optimistic. Thank you all so much.
It's a pleasure being here with you, though.
And by the time I talk to you all again, it would be Independence Day. We have a team tomorrow night. Let's see who's on. Nigel, Dr. Nigel Westmus is going to be on. Amanza Desir is going to be on. Apostle Nigel London is going to be on, and we have a new guest to Politics 101. Leland Rupnarine is going to be on. So we're going to have an all-star team tomorrow night to reflect on independence. As I said, independence and transformation 2023. Independence and Transformation 2023. As usual, I'm indebted to you because without you, there is no Politics 101 and there'll be no forum for our guests, our brothers, our sisters, our comrades to speak to. Our motto here is our nationalisms. And note I say nationalisms. Our ethnic/racial nationalisms, our civic nationalism, that is Guyanese nation, our regional nationalism, our West Indianhood, our Caribbeanhood. And if we can bring all of that to bear on this independence journey, we will be in a better place. Guyana is poised to do much better than it has done. And we must not let this opportunity slip by. As we say, we're black. We may be at the bottom of the proverbial ladder that was created by slavery and colonialism, but we are beautiful too. We are a beautiful part of the beautiful Guyanese nation, West Indian nation, and humanity.
If you hear that, black is beautiful. Santa Claus.
Black is beautiful.
It's a textile. Lift your head like me.